All right, we are picking up where we left off last time. So if you followed along and everything went swimmingly, then you should just be able to use the same file you had. Otherwise, if you go to today's day, oh, I'm a little worried that I'm on February 23rd. Let's take a look at February 28th. Yeah, I think that's the right file. So go ahead and download that file. And that's where we'll be starting from today. So let's just do a quick review of our code. Let's see. Actually, let me check one more thing on our schedule. Schedule. Boggle is due tonight. Okay, so how many of you are saying, you know, I haven't quite started the Boggle project. After all, it's not due till tonight. So if you in that situation, is there anyone else who's kind of struggling with how to deal with sampling without replacement? So random sampling without replacement. So you're going, I'm not quite sure how to get these dice to use, not reuse the dice. I got just a few of you here. How many of you are done with the project? Oh, it's most of us. Okay. So if I understood right, someone said they were going to be running extra office hours tonight. Was that you, Sam? Okay. So Sam's here, and hopefully he'll get you going on that. It's one you don't want to wait much longer on to get started because it's challenging for some folks. Okay. So a quick review of where we left off. So remember that what we're working on is user forms. We're trying to create a form, and I'll just go ahead and show that form here, that will allow the user to edit the information for a particular item without having to deal with all of the other items on the screen. Just give me a way to show all the relevant information and to be able to add some more sophisticated data validation procedures. And so far we've done a couple of things. Really, we've said when the user form opens, so when the user form is initialized, remember that the way that we think now about getting code to run is we got to say, all right, when a particular object receives a particular event, that's when we want the code to run. So the first one that's going to fire here is when the user form object receives the initialize event. That's when this form is first starting up. We're doing a couple of things. We're saying, hey, we want to remember what row we're currently on. So we're reading the row from the active cell, putting it into a row variable that we've declared at the top of our module. So it's a module level variable. It will hold its value as long as this form is open. And then we're calling a function, a subprocedure we created called show data. Show data then just reads information from the worksheet and puts it into the various controls of the form. So here we're reading whatever is on our current row in column F, and that's the name of the product. We're reading that off the sheet, and we are populating the txt name text box then on the user form. The other one, and this one's doing the label, just showing the product ID. Now here we're going through a loop that's going to read in all the options we want for our manufacturers. So if we come here and look in column E of our lists sheet, we should see a list of manufacturers. So yeah, we've got all these manufacturers here, and what we're doing is we're making those the options in our combo box. So when the user drops down the drop box here, we want to see the set of manufacturers they can choose from. And so that's what this loop is doing right here. It says, let's start R off at 2. We're going to continue to execute until we run into a blank cell, looking in column E. And we're going to call the add item method of our combo box and put that value in. Now, I have inadvertently put parentheses around this. They don't need to be there, and they shouldn't be there. It turns out if I only have one argument, if I'm only sending one argument to a method or to a function, I can put parentheses around it, it doesn't cause a problem. But in this case, because I'm not doing anything with return value, I shouldn't have those parentheses there. That gets that loaded up. And then, oh, this was kind of the earlier example when we were only putting one in by itself. I should have deleted this one out. But what that should have the effect is putting cut down calls at the end of the list too. So it's going to show up pretty high in the list because they're sorted alphabetically. And then it's going to show again. Let's just take a look. So here's cut down calls kind of near the top, but if I go to the very end, we see it there again because that code was kind of inadvertently left in the code after the loop. We don't need this one. Stop our code. And then this line, by setting the text box's text value equal to the manufacturer that's currently in the sheet, that will then just make that one selected. So it's selecting one of the items there in that list. Ooh, it's a quick review of what we did last Wednesday. Any questions before we move on? Okay, so let's just look at another tool that we have for another control that we have for manipulating our form. And I don't know what I just did, but that is not the right form. User form 1. I must have just added this. So let me delete this one. User form 1. Okay. So I've got my tools here. Let me go ahead and zoom in. Okay, so the next control that we're going to use is going to be this option button. Option buttons, sometimes called radio buttons, because when they're in a set, when you select one, it automatically unselects the others. Option buttons are going to have a lot of similarity with the checkbox. So they're both, when you click on them, they automatically change their value from true to false or from false to true. So there's some similarity there. I don't think we're going to actually deal with the checkbox here, but just kind of alerting you, they're really similar to working with option buttons. So the checkboxes are simpler because they're all individual. You click it once to check it, click it again to uncheck it, and they're all independent. Option buttons are similar, except they work in a set. Now, before I bring an option button in, I'm going to bring this thing in here. This is called a frame. So you can use a frame just if you want to draw a box around some stuff that has a label on the top. But if you think of this, how is my form going to know, what if I have two sets of option buttons? How is it going to know that when I click a choice here, it's supposed to unset only these, and click a choice here on the other one, it's supposed to unset, just one of those other ones. So it leaves, one of the other ones still selected. And the answer is that's what a frame will do for us. And so when we put option buttons in, we can put option buttons just on the form itself. In that case, they all are in one logical set. But if I put them in a frame, then that frame now draws a boundary around that and says when you select one in the frame, it only unselects others that are in the frame. So let's go ahead and bring the frame in. And we're going to use this for the department. So I'm going to just draw this on here somewhere and get this configured a little bit. I don't think I'm going to be referring to this frame through code. So I'll leave the name as frame 1, but I'm going to change the caption here to say department. Now with that frame selected, I'm going to go ahead and add another option button. I wish my option buttons, well, I'll zoom out. Oh, came to my other screen, here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to bring an option button and I'm going to draw it inside of this frame. Yeah, I'm going to mute my phone. Okay, so here the idea here is that I've only got a few departments, like 4 departments. And so I want to create an interface that the user doesn't have to do 2 clicks to choose a department. They don't have to drop down the list and then choose the department. I just want to have them option buttons to choose from right here on the interface. And so let me go ahead and set this option button up to be my first department, which is hunting. So I got hunting, outdoor, general, and apparel. So this one, I'm going to be referring to this one through code for sure. So let me change the caption to be hunting. And I'll change the name of this one to be OPT for option button, and then hunting. Excellent. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And I'll get 4 of these and get them spaced out. Then I'll set these other ones up. See if I can get them equally spaced. Yes, go ahead. So, yeah, I can control how far the dots are apart, but I don't know any way to kind of zoom in while we're working on it. Yeah. So remember that, you know, this whole interface was kind of made in the 90s. And how many pixels did you have in the 90s? You know, what was kind of, if you had a laptop, yeah, 10 pixels. If you had a laptop, what was kind of the top end resolution when this was kind of current technology, new technology? Like 1024 by 768, which is kind of tiny by today's standards. So there may be a way to do it, but I've never come across it. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and format the rest of these. Ooh, I did not want to double click. Wanted to come to caption, and this one is outdoor. I'll call this one OPT outdoor. We got one that's called apparel. And that's the caption. And then I've got one called general. OPT. Okay. I think if I was designing this, I might put them a little closer together, but it's not terrible. Okay, so now the code to kind of work with this whole set of controls that you might guess is a little more complex than working just with a single one. So let's start off by having it automatically read which one should be checked. So that'll be in our show data. So come back to my code and zoom out. Okay, so when I'm showing the data, just got to go figure out first, where is the department in my product data? Oh, it's in column C. All right, so I'm going to use a switch for this. So I'm going to say, I'll select. So select case. And now I'm going to look at whatever I am reading from column C. Put in my end select. Then I'm going to say, all right, if whatever is in column D is equal to hunting, then what I want to do, I want to make opt hunting the active one. I select it by setting its value equal to true. That will automatically, if there was anything else that was selected before, that'll automatically set everything else to false and only have that one selected as true. I think that's the only line I want to run. And so just to make my code a little bit more readable, I'm going to put this on the same line. And when I want to put two statements on the same line in VBA, I separate them by a colon. And so by putting a colon there, I can say, you know what, take these two statements, put them onto the same line. So now I can just go through and do apparel, opt apparel is true. APPAREL. I've got hunting outdoor. Now, you might think, well, let's do general down here, but I think what I'm going to say is, listen, if it's not hunting, apparel, or outdoor, it's got to be general. And so I'm going to change this from case hunting to case else. And then there I'll set general equal to true. Okay, show me how comfortable you are with this block of code, 0 to 5. 5, 5, 3, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 3. Okay. Just like a bunch of if statements together. So if this value is equal to hunting, we're going to run this line of code. And that is going to make that option button true. If it's not, we'll look at the next one. If it's not, we'll look at the next one. If it's none of those, we'll do this last one. So these are mutually exclusive. We are going to hit only one of these, guaranteed to only hit one of these coming through. And because I have this case else, not only is it going to hit only one of those, it's going to hit exactly one of those. Because if it doesn't hit one of the first three, it will hit the last one. All right, let me go ahead and run this. That looks like we're not quite there because this one is showing that we've got general. So what did I miss? H-U-N-T-I-N-G. H-U-N-T-I-N-G. Oh, it's not row D, it's row C. So C is where our department is. And now we've got hunting is the one that's selected. If we come down to one that's not hunting, we should see that it selects outdoor when I run it. And that's selecting outdoor. Okay, so my little problem was when I copied that line of code from above, I did not update the column that it was looking at. So in terms of getting this set of option buttons to show the right value, that's what it takes. Usually a select statement is a good way to do it. Now, so far in our other ones, to actually get it to save the data, all we had to do was reverse the line. We don't have that luxury here, so it's going to be a little more complicated. But let's go ahead then and get ourselves saving. So here in save data, put a little note here that says save the department. Okay, so someone talk to me. How are we going to save the department? What are we going to have to do here? Go ahead. That's right. So we've got to look through and say, hey, is this first one checked? If the first one is checked, if our hunting option is checked, we know we ought to write the word hunting into that particular cell. So let's go ahead and, yeah, so in a sense, it is the same thing, but we can't just kind of copy the code and reverse it and we're in good shape. So we're going to say here, stop the code. And we're going to say if OPT hunting equals true, then we'll do something. Otherwise, we'll do another check and so forth. H-U-N-T-I-N-G. But I want to just take this little opportunity here to push a little bit on our understanding of Boolean expressions or conditions. What is the value of OPT hunting? It's a Boolean property, so it has two possibilities for its value. What is it? True or false, 0 or -1, if you want to think of it numerically. Those are both good answers. So let's suppose that it is true, but it's true or false all by itself. So do I even need this part? Or can I just say this, if OPT hunting, then? Remember that what I need between the if and the then is something that evaluates to true or false. This by itself evaluates to true or false. In fact, if I ever put equals true, that is always unnecessary, because what this means is the whole condition will be true when this part of it is true, right? And so if this part's true, I don't need to add this at all. So if OPT hunting, actually dot value, if I didn't say dot value, it would assume the dot value property. That is the default property for this. So that would work okay. I would prefer to see it expressly written out. Okay, so just kind of a poll. How many of you are saying, you know what, even though we don't need the equals true in there, I like it better with equals true in there. A little more readable. Yeah, I kind of agree. How many are saying, you know what, don't type, that's just more typing. The last thing we want is Professor Allen typing any more than he has to. Yeah, do it, this way. So I want to make sure you understand this approach, because when you read other people's code, this is a really common thing to do. But when we're first starting out, it says, because it reads a little bit more like English, if this value equals true, then do something. It's a little more readable that way. So I am happy to have you write that either way that you please. Is one more efficient than the other? Yeah, it might save a nanosecond, right? I mean, it's not worth, the efficiency is not a reason to make a decision on this particular approach. So if that's the case, then we are going to set column C equal to hunting. We'll have an else if then we'll have an else. Okay, else. So if hunting is true, we do this. When we hit the else if, we drop out. Otherwise, we're going to check to see if opt apparel is true. Then we're going to set this to apparel. And then we'll drop out. But if we don't, we're going to look at outdoor. And then we're going to set it to outdoor. Otherwise, we'll set it to general. So it's the same thing in reverse. We're going to use a different structure to do it. Makes more sense to use an if then, else if construct because we're not looking at the same thing every time. This time we're looking at hunting. This time we're looking at apparel, outdoor, and so forth. All right, let me just check and make sure that code works. I'm going to change this one. I'm not quite sure where we are. Right there. Change that one to hunting. I seem to recall putting a hotkey on this. Was it E, Control Shift E? Yeah, we can change it to hunting. We can change it to apparel. And that gets changed just fine. Okay, that's using sets of option buttons. Because I've got them in a frame, if I wanted another set of option buttons, as long as they're in a different frame, I don't have to think about anything more complex about the code. They will act as independent sets of option buttons. So let's look at the next thing. Next one that we're going to want to take a look at is quite a bit more complex, and that's the list box. So the list box is this one right here. So the list box is like a combo box, except for two major differences. The list box stays open all the time. It's like, this is like the part that drops down, but it never goes away. It just stays there, always you can choose. And the other thing that's really different about it is that with a combo box, you get to choose one value off that list. With a list box, you can choose multiple values. Because the list is always open, you can say, oh, I want this one, and this one. And it's possible to choose more, no matter how you configure it. So let's go ahead and bring that on. And this is going to be for our promotion. So come look at our data. Then we've got a product can have more than one promotion put on it here. And so if I look at my list, we've got some promotions here: free shipping, free warranty, buy one, get one free, and then some kind of % discount. And we expect the folks in marketing to come up with all kinds of different promotions throughout the life. And we want to be able to kind of easily add them here, make a number 5, and give the name of it and have that just kind of show up and start working. That's what we're dealing with. So this is going to be our promotion. So I'm going to call this LST promotion. Maybe just promo, LST promo. I think it probably should have some text identifying it. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll just copy my manufacturer label, put it above here and call this promotions. Again, I'm not going to be referring to it through code, so the name will be fine. I'll just change the caption. Okay, now like the combo box, kind of step 1 is going to be when this form loads, let's put the choices into this that we need. So I'm going to go ahead and come back to my show data. And maybe we'll put a couple more comments in here. This is set the default value of the combo of the option buttons. Now we're going to add the values, add the choices to the list box. In fact, it's going to be so close to what we had up here for the combo box. I'm going to copy the combo box code and then paste it down here to modify. Now these are in column, is it column 1 or 2? Looks like it's column 2. So I'll be looking at column B here. And instead of saying CBO manufacturer, I'm going to say LST promo, and we'll read the value out of column B. We're not going to set the selected one the same way, so I'm going to get rid of this. But that should give me the choices to pick from. Let's give it a shot. Yeah, so we've got free shipping, free warranty, buy one, get one F, and discount. So maybe we should make that a little bit wider, but I think you get the idea. Right, by default, this list box is only going to allow me to choose one at a time, I think. Let's look at multi-select. Yeah, so there's a property over here called multi-select. And right now, the multi-select property is set to single. I'm going to change this down. I've got 2 options. If I choose multi-select multi, that means each one of these now will be toggled on or off by clicking on it. I've got 4 to choose from here. I could click the first one, that turns it on. Click it again, it turns it off. Click the second one, it turns it on. Click the third one, turns it on. I could have 2 selected. My other choice here is extended. And extended, if you're familiar with using hotkeys, like for selecting files in Windows, you could hold the control key down to kind of click on individual files, or click one file, hold the shift key down and click another file to select everything between them. That's the behavior that you're choosing when you say select extended. I only have 4 items to choose from here, so I think extended is probably overkill. And so I'm going to leave it as select multi. Okay, so now if I run this, we can now select one, select another one, and each one of these toggles independently on and off. So now we've got something we really want to get rid of. We could give free shipping, free warranty, buy one, get one free, and give them a discount as well. Now for the challenging part. The challenging part here is that we've got to make one of those to be selected. Let's first just see what does it take to make it selected, kind of hard coding one of these to be selected rather than trying to read it off the sheet. So let's just select the second one. Here's how we do it. It turns out that this list box, LST promo, has a property called selected. So let me say LST promo dot selected. As a property called selected, I think this is going to be the first property that we have dealt with that is itself an array. So selected is not like true or false. It's like this is an array of values. How many elements do you think are in this array? By this time right here. By the time that line is going to execute, how many elements will be in my array? Yeah, there'll be 4. And so my selected array has 4 options. What do you think they're numbered? 0 through 3. So if I want to make the first one selected, I'm going to say 0. So look at the selected array inside my list promo and set the number 0, 1 equal to true. So selected is a Boolean array. And by setting the corresponding element in that array to true, that will make that one selected. Let's select 1 and 4. The first one and the fourth one. So that would be indices 0 and 3. So now when I run this, 0, the first one and the fourth one, the number 0, 1, the number 3, 1 are both selected. This is setting the default value. So our challenge is going to be now to be able to make that happen based on what values are in the worksheet. Let's take a look at those values. So if I look at this first record right here, it says, hey, we've got 2 promotions going on this right now, promotion number 1 and promotion number 4. The very fact that I can see it's promotion number 4 makes me think that the way that we're identifying these is not by their array index, but by their ordinal position, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're going to make the assumption here that these are going to be sequential. It's not going to be 1, 2, 5, and 7. And so by doing that, we can allow the position that an element is showing in that list to be a surrogate for the number that identifies it. It's going to be off by 1, but we can rely on that position being something to identify this. So in other words, when we look at the data and we see that there's a 1 here, then we know we've got to select the first one. We've got to select the number 0, 1. If it's a 4, we've got to select the number 3. There's 2 ways that we can go about doing this. One way would be to say, all right, after we've loaded it all up, let's look at this value that's in this field and let's split it into an array. We've got the split function. We could split this into an array and then just go across that array and say, all right, what numbers are in this array? Let's go and select those. That's one approach that we could take. The other approach we could take is to say, well, listen, while we're loading this up, like right while we're in the process of loading it, let's just check and see if that one, right? So as we're going through this, as soon as we add the first one, we can say, let's check and see if that one's in the array. And I'm indifferent as to which one we choose. I think I'm going to go ahead and choose this one because it'll be a little more analogous to what we have to do when it comes time to save. And so I think it might get you to understand saving a little bit better. Okay, so at this point, when I'm right here in the code, I've got, I have just barely added an item. What I want to do is check to see if the appropriate index number is in the list of promotions that are on that particular one. So that's column H. So I'm going to do this. We've just added that item. I'm going to say if something, then, and if. Now what's the something here? I want to look to see if the index number that I'm on, how can I know the index number that I'm on? Turns out, let me go ahead and comment both of these lines out for a minute. I'm going to do a debug.print. I can ask how many elements there are in the list at any given time. So lstpromo.list count. That will tell me how many. So I just added the first one. What's my list count going to be? List count will be 1. So now this should show 1, 2, 3, 4 in my immediate window when I run the form. And so that is printed out here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if, and now I want to know if whatever my list count is, if that's in that cell, then I'm in pretty good shape. So how do we find one string inside of another string? What function lets me find a string inside another string? In string. So in string, starting at the first character, looking at the cell, I'll go back and get that code, looking for my list count. Now that returns the position that it finds it. If it doesn't find it, it returns a 0. So if that is anything greater than 0, then I want to do the inserting. So what am I looking at? I'm looking at this expression here, but only in column H. So I'm going to be looking at column H. I'm going to be looking for however many items we have entered at this point. And if it finds that, I've got to add something here. What do I got to add? Well, I just want to select that one. So I'm going to change one of the selected array. Which one am I going to change? Yeah, my count. So let's think about it. When I've just added the very first one, my count is going to be 1. What index number of my selected array do I want to flip to true? 0. Yeah, so this is going to be count minus 1. So now on this one where it's 1 and 4, we should be okay. Let's run it and see what we have. There's 1 and 4. We choose one that's got just 2 on it. Control Shift E. Now I've got just the number 2, 1 selected. Got one down here that's 1 and 2. Control Shift E. Got those 2 selected. That looks pretty good. There's kind of a hidden trap in here. There's going to be a hidden problem. Once I get up to, say, more than 9 options in here, I'm going to have an issue. And what's the issue? That's right. Because now what I'm saying is if I have 11 is the one that's selected in here, stop that. Let's suppose I had, or even a 10. Let's suppose I had 10, option number 10 here selected. What I'm going to do is when I've just added the very first one, so when my list count, let's see, where is it? If my list count is 1, and I'm going to say, is 1 inside this cell? Is 1 inside this cell? Yeah. Should I be selecting promotion number 1? No. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to be kind of paying attention to this idea of there being a comma in here. So I'm not going to look for just a 1, but I'm going to look for a 1 surrounded by commas. That's going to be a problem when I only have 1 entry. But let's go ahead and see how to deal with it. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to look at what's in that cell, but I'm not going to change what's in the cell. But for this in-string function, I want to look at what's in that cell with a comma on each side of it. So if I only have 11 in there, it's going to be comma 11 comma that I'm actually looking at. I won't change what's in the cell. Cell's going to be just there. But for this process of looking here, I'm going to concatenate on a comma here at the front. And at the end of the value, I will concatenate on a comma here as well. Having the commas be the one that's separating there, let me just, I think it's number 34, CHR 34 is a quote. So let me find out what a comma is. It's 44. So here, instead of concatenating on a string version of the comma, I'm going to concatenate on character number 44. Character number 44 is a comma. I just think it's a little bit more readable to see it this way than to see comma, quote, comma, quote, comma. How many of you agree? It's easier to read with character 44 there than with the comma in quotes. And how many of you are saying that the comma was better by itself? Yeah, actually more of you were in that situation. I'm going to leave it like this because it's already there. Okay, so now what I'm looking at is surrounded by commas, and so when it comes time to actually do the comparison, it's going to be looking at this. I mean, I haven't changed the cell, but that's what it'll be looking at for this cell. So now I can look for 1, 1, and that will prevent me from accidentally finding a 1 over here in the 10. So now that's what I'm searching in. And what I'm searching for, I'm going to put the commas around here as well. And this one I'll do with the way that you seem to prefer it, which is comma, ampersand. Comma, ampersand. Whoops. Comma, ampersand. Oh, there we go. Okay. That's what I'm trying to find. So the first time I hit this, LST promo list count is going to be 1. And I'm going to be looking for comma, 1, comma. Well, because I'm putting a comma on the outside of what's in there, it's still going to find that one here because it'll be looking for comma, 1, comma. It will find comma, 1, comma. We'll have a comma prefixed on here. And that would prevent the problem of accidentally hitting. Should we ever get up to more than 9, 10, 11, 12, it would save us from accidentally tripping the 1 when we hit the 10. Yeah, go ahead. Would this be an issue using the split method? This is going to be, you wouldn't have to worry about this with split at all. Because what you'd be doing, in fact, we probably have time to look at it that way as well. I'm going to go ahead and show you that way as well. Let's see that this way works, still works, and then we'll take a look at the other approach. Then I'll let you vote. Maybe you'll convince me to do it the other way next time. I don't know. Next time I teach this. Okay, so let's make sure this still works. And I'm on a line that doesn't have any of these. It's got a 10 in there, but that's not, well, that's good. We didn't accidentally find the 1 or find the 10 when we're looking for 1. Control Shift E. We're still finding those okay. Still finding that one okay. So I think we're okay. This is a pretty convoluted line. All right. But let me go ahead then and comment out this part because this is the part that is selecting that. And let's take a look at the other approach. For the other approach, I'm going to do it after the loop has already run. So this loop has run. It has filled in all my choices into the list box. So now what I want to do is I want to look at what's in the cell. I want to split that into an array and then iterate across that array. So I'm going to dim active promos and I'll just make this a variant. Then I'm going to say active promos equals split. And I'm going to split my whatever's in column H. And I'm going to split it based on the presence of a comma. I'm just going to look over here, and there's no space between there. So it's not like comma space, it's just a comma. We'll probably want to anticipate that possibility of someone coming in here and saying, oh, you know what, I just want to type it in and putting a space in there. That's something we'll want to deal with as well. Okay, so now this should give me an array of all the elements of all the promotions that are in that cell. So now I want to iterate across that array. We dim x as an integer for x equals 0 to the upper boundary of active promos now. I don't really have to check to see if this is here because I now have the set of the promos that should be selected. So here I should just be able to say me.lstpromo.selected. And then which element I'm in. I got to figure out which element I want, but I'm going to set that equal to true. Which element do I want? Active promos sub x. So this is going to be 1 and 4. So active promos sub x is going to be a 1. So I want to subtract 1 off of that number. I think that will do it. Let me go ahead and run that one and we'll see. Didn't like something. This is pretty good. When you have an error in the initialization of a form, it's kind of a tough one to track down because you could not set the selected property of something, but it doesn't show you where the line is. There's no debug here. Oh, that's unfortunate. There's no reason they couldn't have showed me that line, but they didn't. So here's what I'm going to do instead. Down here on my initialize, I'm going to put a breakpoint. So now when I run the form, it's going to stop right there. And now I'll just use F8 to step through all of this. I've got some loops here that I want to avoid. So let me come down to where my code, I know I'm having the trouble, put a breakpoint here and run to that. And now I'll step and it'll show me where the error is happening. I think it's happening here. So I'm going to poke around here a little bit. Ah, yeah, so this isn't happening. Yeah, this is a problem on my number 10. See how active promos sub X is 10? Because I'm on the line where I wrote the 10 in there. Is 10 a valid value in there? No, it's not. I've only got 4 promotions, 1 through 4. So this is a problem. So I think what I need to do before I just try to assume that that's valued and write the value, I probably should check to make sure that it's in the right range. So I'm going to say if something, then we'll do this. And what will that something be? If the value we're looking at here is less than the upper boundary of my active promos. So now if the number that we're trying to assign is in the right range, then we'll set it. Okay, so that one comes up without anything set. There is no promotion 10. Take off my breakpoints and run it again on ones that have them. Where's my stop? Oh, stop is down here. Oh, it's not a stop, it's a regular breakpoint. Okay, so I'll come back to this one, Control Shift E. Ooh. I expected that to do it. So let's just go back and let's see why not. Let's go take a look. So where I'm, let's see. So where I'm declaring this, no, because I'm making this a variant, that should be okay. So if I put a stop right here, we'll run the code to here. I should be able to look at active promos and it should already be its value. So let's look at number 0. It has a 1 in it. Number 1 has the 4 in it. So active promos is configured okay. So what I'm trying to do, I'm going to find out if actually we'll go step by step through here and see if we come into here. We don't get into here. So active promos sub X is not less than the upper boundary of active promos. So let's see what these individual elements are. That's a 1. That's a 1. Ah, if it's less, if active promos minus 1 is less than the upper boundary. Oh, wait a minute. I don't want the upper boundary of active promos. I want the upper boundary of my list. I still think I need to minus 1 here, but that is LST promo dot list count. And actually that should be, that's a count. I think I need to leave this without the minus 1. I don't need the upper boundary of it because it's not an array. It is the number I'm looking for itself. Okay, so I got free shipping, but I'm missing the 4th one. It's less than or equal to. It's missing that one because it's the very last one. There we go. Go ahead and get rid of my stop and see that this works on all my other ones. Got 2, got 1 and 2. So that's the other approach. So in this approach, we're saying, hey, take a look at what's there, cut it up into an array, and then go and set each one of those values individually. Which one do you like better? The approach where we cut it into an array and then iterate across that array? Who says that? I like that approach better than doing this in-string business with the commas. And we're saying, you know what? Commas is like one if statement. I like it better. Looks like the cut it into an array is kind of slightly more preferred. I'm indifferent. Either one is fine with me. A long time since I wrote this one. Kind of stumbled through it, but got there in the end. Okay. So now I think we're getting the data in place. Right? We're getting the right ones selected. So our next chore is going to be to say, hey, when the user has changed it, we've got to change what's there. So let's look at that on the output. All right, any thoughts? We'll go show the picture up here again. Any ideas for an algorithm of what we should do when it comes time to save this back out? What should we do? Even if you only have, kind of a part of it, what's a part of the solution here? Well, I think our approach is going to be, hey, let's just take a look. Let's just look across the whole selected array, right? So my list box has this array called selected. I'm going to iterate across that whole array. And whichever one is selected, we got to build a string that we can write into that cell. So we're going to start off by iterating across that. So let me declare x as an integer. For x equals 0 to, we can either ask for the upper boundary of the selected array, or we can ask for the list count of the item. I think we'll ask for the upper boundary. Upper bound of me dot list promo dot selected. Now we just need to see, as we're iterating across that, if we find one that is selected. So if selected sub x equals true, then we're going to remember that's when we got to put in. So I'm going to need some string. We'll just call it temp as a string. Some kind of temporarily hold a value. At this point, temp is going to equal what it used to equal, concatenated on with a comma, concatenated on with the index that we're after. So if I find it, if the very first one is selected, x is going to be 0, and in that case, I want to write 1 out to the cell. Just going to stop the code here so we can take a look at what it's done to temp, and then we'll decide what to do with it when we get there. So let's run this code. And let me go ahead and set that to 1 and 3 as selected. So the upper boundary, LST promo, I expect that should work just fine. I'm not sure why it's not working, but let's just go ahead and do the list count -1. We got 5, I've got 4 elements in the list. I want to go from 0 to 3. I don't need that to be U-bound, just need to be the number itself. Okay, so we've gone through there. And now let's take a look at what temp is. Looks pretty good. except I got this leading comma. So what I want to do is I want to write into column H everything but the leading comma. Now, if I don't hit this anytime, it's going to be blank. So let's do this. If our temp is greater than a zero length string, by the way, a zero length string is the smallest string you can have. So if you want to find out something that's not empty, you could say if it's greater than a zero length string. Alternatively, you could say if it's not equal to, less than or greater than, but there is nothing less than. I prefer to see it as greater than. So if there's something in it, then what do we want to do? We want to set column H equal to everything that's in that string except the first character, mid of temp starting at the second character. And so that should have written 1,3 then into our cell. Bring this one up. Nothing is selected. I'll do 3 and 4. And it gives me 3 and 4 there in the cell. Questions here? Okay, Sam, take a look at the project that deals with user forms. And have I missed, do we deal with anything else here that we haven't covered so far? Let's take a quick look at the options that we have on the form and see if there's any other tools that I want to make you aware of. Just kind of review what these other ones are. Checkbox we've talked about. Toggle button. We've got here, how did I make user form 1 again? So a toggle button basically is just another way of having something be on or off. This was actually a really bad idea. It's like an option button, except it looks different. And if it looked the way that it looked up here in the little set of tools, it might be okay. But the way a toggle button works is this. You click it once and it kind of stays in and that's on. Click it again, it turns it off. All right, it is really logically identical to a checkbox. It just looks different. In the 1990s, we thought that was a good idea. I don't know if anyone thinks it's a good idea today. But that's what that is. Frame we've talked about, command button we've used. So a multi-page is kind of interesting. We bring a multi-page on. And right now you can see it's got 2 tabs. I'm going to go ahead and put my toggle button on one of them. You can see that as I select the tab, it's got different things. So you could have like different logical pages here organized by the tab and then kind of automatically hides and shows the parts of it. This one is called a tab strip, and it is just the tabs. It doesn't do anything with hiding what's on the little components. And so you would have to have code that decides what to do when the different tabs are clicked. This is a scroll bar. So you could actually like put a scroll bar on, and you're basically using this to set a numeric value. So if I look at this, it's got a minimum and a maximum. So right now the maximum is positive 32,767, the minimum is 0. And as this changes, let's just do a message box of scroll bar 1.value. So we set this up to fire this event when that scroll bar changes, it's going to show its value. MSG BOX. So that's 8,037, 18,054. It just allows you to graphically change the value of a number in between. Why that blinks when it's selected, I don't know, but it's kind of annoying. Sam, are you finding anything else that we're requiring? Okay, so it looks like we are doing the checkbox. Let me just show you the checkbox real quick. So if I come back and look at my tools, there we go. So checkbox is here. You have a caption for each option, like an option button does. And then it has a value like an option button, true and false. You can read it. Okay, take a look at this. When we call message box, so I know many of you are still kind of have your mind more on the Boggle project, which is due tonight, but we've now covered all the content that you need for the user forms project. And we're going to have you put up here like an alert, like a message box. If there's a problem with the data validation is really common. You gave me something that's not valid, I'm going to tell you what's not valid about it. The trouble with the message box function, the way it is that when that message box goes up, it halts all VBA, period. So what language is the grader written in? Written in VBA. So we don't really want the grader to stop. And so what I've done is I've created and given you a function called message box. So it's like a function, message box, it has some arguments. And all message box does is it calls the MSG box function with the same parameters that you put in here. So we've got a value here. It's going to do a message box with value. It's just going to pass it in. But it has a little extra logic in it to know, hey, is the grader running? And if the grader is running, it actually doesn't display it. It just kind of moves on. So what that means is that when I'm asking you to write a message box, then I'm asking you to use this function to display the message box. But all the arguments are the same for the message box function and the MSG box function. So you're going to call, you'll do it like this. So right, instead of calling MSG box, I'm going to call message box. Well, what does it do? It passes its value to that function and uses the message box to display it. So this should behave the same way. Would help if I spelled it right. So I'm calling message box and it's using the MSG box function. So that just means that when we say the way you're going to display it is you're going to use this one, and it's just so the grader can kind of keep rolling along without you having to dismiss the message box while it's grading. Questions? Yep. In regular life, using MSG box is the right way to go. It's kind of a strange thing I'm having you do for this project so the grader can grade it well. All right, I guess that's going to be it for today. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed. Hey, I'll be right with you.